Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming to spend some time with us. My name is Mackenzie Wallachek, and I serve as the Stewardship Director with Friends of the Detroit River. We also have Kaylee Peterson here with us, and Sam Walsh will also be joining. She's directing folks into the room right now. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and record, or actually, Kaylee, do you mind pressing record on there? And, oh, perfect. Then we'll just use that recording. That works out well.
Recording in progress.
All right, perfect. So we'll open up Zoom and make sure this is sharing. Share my screen. Okay. How's it look from the virtual side, Kaylee? Perfect. Great. Okay. Actually, well, it doesn't show. Oh, there we go. Okay, so my name is Mackenzie Wallachek again, and we're here to discuss our Ecorse Creek support effort. So for the past decade, Friends of the Detroit River has been engaged with the Alliance of Downriver Watersheds, and we have been working with them to develop and implement the Ecorse Creek Watershed Management Plan. More recently, we started to engage with the Ecorse Creek Committee to help identify efforts for projects that can help implement goals of the Watershed Management Plan. I'll minimize this too for viewing purposes. So priorities of the plan include things like improving water quality, reducing flashing flows and flooding conditions, increasing recreational access, and public opportunities to engage with the river. A watershed is an area of land that helps to capture water and directs it to one different water body. So the Ecorse Creek watershed is a highly urbanized 43 square mile watershed located right here in Wayne County. And you can see on the screen just below Detroit. And the Ecorse Creek watershed actually inputs into the Detroit River in the city of Ecorse. And you can see on the image on the screen that there are issues with the water quality from Ecorse Creek as it enters into the Detroit River. FDR, Friends of the Detroit River, acts as the fiduciary for the Public Advisory Council that works to delist the Detroit River area of concern. And so water quality is an issue for not only just us as an organization, but for the larger area of concern of this region. Okay. The Ecorse Creek watershed is divided into 3 drainage subsets. So a drainage district is located in orange, blue, and yellow on the screen. In orange is the north branch of the Ecorse River. The blue is an enclosed storm sewer called LeBlanc Drain, and in yellow is the area of land that flows to the south branch of Ecorse Creek, also called the Sexton Kilfoyle Drain. There's 11 different communities that partially make up the entire watershed, and those are listed on the left hand of the screen. And for our scope of the project, we are limited to the north branch and the south branch of Ecorse Creek, so the orange and yellow areas on the map, and more specifically 1,000 feet within the creek and or hydrologically connected drain to that area. So when we're talking about Ecorse Creek and water quality and flooding issues, it's important to recognize why we're seeing things like this. Heavy urbanization has impacted the area and our water quality, and this is due to the percent of impervious surfaces in the area. An impervious surface is a hard surface that is impenetrable for when rainwater comes down and hits it. It is not able to absorb into the ground, so instead it flows to a nearby storm sewer drain, it flows into a parking lot, into a road, and so on and so forth. And so having more impervious surfaces directs more water more quickly to these drainage areas that were originally created for agriculture. So in agriculture, everything is pervious around it. We have plants and we have pervious surfaces where when the rainwater hits, it is able to infiltrate and slow down and absorb before it's brought to the drain. And so having a watershed that was created for drains but is now in a heavily urbanized area is why we're starting to see some of these issues. We have more water making its way more quickly to these drains that were created for agricultural runoff. So studies have shown that in a watershed, when as little as 10% of the watershed is impervious surfaces, that there's already signs of water quality degradation. When this area reaches more than 30%, the watershed is considered severely damaged for its nearby waterways. And as you can see for Ecorse Creek, back in 2008, we were already over 41% impervious surfaces throughout the watershed. And with the projected land use changes by SEMCOG, it is estimated to reach almost 45% by the year 2030. So we're well beyond the 10% area where water quality starts to be degraded, and we're well surpassed the 20 to 30% where there is known degradation to these local waterways. And so with years of urbanization, much of Ecorse Creek's historical floodplain and wetland areas have been filled in and lost. The high amount of these impervious surfaces and inadequate stormwater infrastructure have worsened flooding in the watershed. When water can't soak into the ground, it flows into the storm drains, taking contaminants and pollutants from roadways into our local creek. The storm drains cannot always handle the quantity of water received, nor the combination of water and debris that often makes its time into our waterways. And this can lead to flooding. In addition to the flooding, the creek is subject to low water quality, little habitat diversity, and varying levels of water flow. These issues impact recreational use and enjoyment of the creek by its residents, as well as limit the use of suitable habitat for aquatic organisms. And so you can see these are all images from Ecorse Creek. When stormwater flows across roadways, it picks up debris, and that is all stuff that can't make it through grates and can't make it through the pipes that are supposed to lead out to the creek. So we have not only the issue of low water quality more quickly making its way to the creek during stormwater events, which creates a flashy flow, which increases erosion and sedimentation. And then once that flashy flow is gone and the rain has subsided, we have low base levels. So low that not aquatic organisms nor fish or wildlife can successfully use the creek. And then this leads to further water degradation. Which is why Friends of the Detroit River is creating an inventory spreadsheet of potential restoration sites along the creek. We're collecting information from a literature review. As many of you know, there's been many studies and reports already done on this, so we're taking that information, including it into our efforts, but also making sure that we're meeting with the city officials and the community residents to make sure that anything that wasn't encapsulated in those studies is going to be used into our project. Next, we compile this information from a list and we'll put it onto a map. We will then overlay that map with some environmental justice scores to make sure underserved communities are getting the appropriate attention that they need. And then next steps, we will prioritize this list of sites based on the most relative impact that they're going to provide to the communities. And then phase 3 will be seeking funding for those projects. Some example ideas are taken from the Ecorse Creek Committee's vision plan, and they're on the screen here. These are just depictions of what some of these projects might look like to give you all ideas and kind of stir up some thoughts on what you might like to see with the creek. Another image from the Ecorse Creek Committee vision plan is focusing on the downriver communities, so the most downstream communities. And there is efforts to connect existing parks with a larger greenway corridor, integrating green stormwater infrastructure, connecting this to the Detroit River. And this is something that we would like to see throughout the entire watershed. The committee's just already had discussions on this, so they have kind of one foot in the door on this, but we expect to see many similar projects like this pop up all throughout the watershed, from the headwaters in Romulus to the confluence with the Detroit River in the city of Ecorse. And so that's why we're here today. We want to hear from you. We want to know what issues you've been experiencing in your community. This could be where you live, where you work, where you recreate. We want to know what issues you have been experiencing. We're also interested in what opportunities you would like to see from these projects. Would you like more green spaces? Would you like more hiking and biking trails? Would you like more access for paddling on the river? And we want to hear what these opportunities look like from you. And lastly, we want to know, are there specific locations in the watershed within 1,000 feet of the drain that could be used for a project? This doesn't have to be a full vacant lot. It could look like my backyard, a portion of my backyard. It could also look like an overutilized or an underutilized, oversized parking lot. Is there a parking lot you're always driving by and there's maybe 4 cars in there and the rest of the parking lot is never utilized? These are opportunities that we're looking for. It could also look like an open field space next to your place of worship, an underutilized park that maybe could use some renovations for more uses, but also could just include vacant lands, again, within 1,000 feet of the drain. And so we'll have opportunities here in a little bit for folks to voice their concerns, issues, wants, desires out loud. We also have all this information available online. We have a very brief Google survey, so that's accessible by the QR code on the screen. We also have printed versions on our table, and this is a way for you all to tell us specifically what you would like to see out of these projects. If you know folks that maybe were able to make it tonight but would like a chance to continue these conversations, or if you're really engaged and want to come visit us again, we have one more public hearing session. That's going to be conducted on June 13th, and it will be completely virtual. So right now we're hybrid. We have some folks online and the folks in person. So if you're interested, we also have that opportunity. And lastly, we want to thank our funding agency, EGLE's Non-Point Source program, for giving us this opportunity to engage with the communities and make sure the residents' voices are heard on these matters, as well as the numerous communities, stakeholders, and interested residents that have already provided feedback and data on these efforts, and also the rest of our FDR team. And with that, I can take any questions that we'll have, and then after I'm done taking questions, we'll give an opportunity for folks to grab surveys if they want to fill them out here today on paper, or we can open up for listening sessions and the online surveys. Yes? Can we go to the podium for those on Zoom? Oh, yes, that would be great. Thank you, Mariana.
Good evening, and thanks for being here, first of all. One thing that, I want to make aware that at one point, Ecorse Creek was really a river. And somewhere along the line, someone designated it a river or a creek so it could be built on. But for some crazy reason, and I'm just going to say Dearborn Heights, has been tasked on fixing this when we don't own the creek. That creek belongs to the county. And I may be cutting off my nose to spite my face here since I'm a councilman, but the responsibility of the creek really is the county. And it's just a bad situation. That's and if they build more and more to the west of us near the airport, the more problems we're going to have. I mean, we're trying to combat things with CSO and things of that nature, but until the county steps up and does what they're supposed to do, I think it's a lost cause. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Was there a question you wanted me to address in that, or I want to make sure I'm okay. I just wanted to make sure I'm not missing out.
Point of reference,
yeah.
Okay, that there's no way we could spend $300 million on fixing the flooding problem.
Yes, and
there's just no way.
And I can just comment. So, with the decades of these issues, there are a lot of feelings about Ecorse Creek. And yes, the Ecorse drain is what the Wayne County would be calling it. It is mandated under the Drain County Code. So there are very specific ways that they can go about to do this work. Friends of the Detroit River is trying to work with Wayne County on those efforts, so ours aren't duplicated. So we can't also go in and do the normal drain maintenance activities. However, we can identify adjacent lands next to the creek to create floodplain habitat that will be able to bring water in, store it in those heavy rain events, and in a purposeful way allow the water to infiltrate, create habitat, also creating recreational opportunities. And then once the storm has rolled away, the water can slowly dissipate back into the creek. So trying to reduce the amount of water that's immediately heading into there. But yes, ultimately, we do need the maintenance funds as well. Yes?
So my name is Ali Dib. I'm the city engineer. Along the same lines, the issue with the creek itself, you mentioned availability of lots near the Ecorse Creek, which can be used as a detention basin for. So having looked at that issue extensively and haven't done enough studies on the Ecorse Creek itself to try to find the root cause of the flooding, I'm not a believer that the detention is the appropriate way to go for two reasons. One is the capacity of the channel itself of the river has been reduced, drastically reduced since the inception. So you say the head-end communities, upstream communities, are not as impacted as us, Dearborn Heights, and the reason for that is the channel itself. The size of the channel itself has not been maintained to what the original design was. So in addition to lack of maintenance, we have things like lack of debris removal. We've surveyed our portion, the city's portion, the 5.5 miles within the city of Dearborn Heights, and found that, yes, even before we get into the water quality and recreational uses, we have more immediate concerns and needs, and that is the capacity of the channel to carry the water, the condition of the piping, our drainage, our outfall structures. You showed one picture of an outfall structure, but I can share many more that in addition to debris blockage, the structure itself is almost 100% in sediment. It's buried. So it is not allowing for drainage to take place. So then we go back to the true cause of that. And yes, I agree with debris and roadway debris making it to the river. But if you go to the channel itself, it requires restoration in order to get it back to what the capacity was when it was intended to drain these communities. So in addition to development and impervious surfaces, the lack of capacity in the channel is extremely critical. So that, to me, is a number one concern before we talk about, creating green spaces. And by the way, we have a lot of spaces that can be used for that. But it doesn't do me any good to store water if I don't have a place to discharge later. In addition to that, I know you mentioned the water quality, and then you work with ADW. Well, I review the reports, and the water quality is twofold. The testing within the river, which shows some concerns, and then testing outside, the point sources, and both of which we have concerns with. I mean, the communities, if you test the water in the river and you have one picture showing the debris in the water, well, that's an indication you're going to have some quality issues. And you also have discharges from businesses. Well, within Dearborn Heights, I don't have that concern, but I do know within the creek itself, we do have some hits and some, concerns. But any way you look at it, it boils back to we have a drain that needs to be maintained, whether it's, cleanup or an actual dredging and restoration of the channel, and then you can talk about creating a habitat, creating, public use for the creek, but there are priorities, and they need to be addressed in that order, in my opinion. So I'm hoping that your organization can assist with that, because that's where the problem is.
Yeah, no, those are great points. And just to comment on that, so things like the actual stormwater infrastructure, the outfalls, the storm sewer drains that are flowing into the creek, it's not to say that those couldn't be included in a project focus, but it wouldn't, if it were within proximity of the project that we are talking about. So within 1,000 feet of the drain, if there's an area of land that we are prioritizing for a project and there's an outfall within that scope, that could be addressed. However, going through the entire watershed and addressing all the outfalls specifically is something that would not be valid in this. So Friends of the Detroit River is an environmental nonprofit group that works to protect, defend, and enhance the Detroit River and surrounding lands and waters. We are not a drain deputy commission. So we have to follow projects that match with our mission and values and goals. And so in our best effort to help assist with some of these, we are looking to do more of the green infrastructure, habitat restoration types of projects, while other communities and other stakeholders and federal agencies are addressing kind of the larger picture, folks like Army Corps of Engineers and the county. So we are very much viewing our projects to supplement those, and by no means will one of these projects solve the issue, but we're here to enhance what's already going on. There's a lot of momentum, bringing back some of the studies that have been done and getting those federal agencies back into play on some of this. So I hear the concerns, and we agree there is a method to doing this in the right fashion. However, all of those methods take many years, and so what we're identifying today likely won't be shovel ready for another few years. And by that time, hopefully, with some of the $10 million of ARPA funding that the county is going to be putting towards North Branch, Ecorse Creek maintenance issues, as well as potentially the Army Corps of Engineers detention basin, having our projects be in alignment with those to improve and enhance what they're bringing, while keeping in mind that ours are going to be very green focused and not gray focused.
Okay.
Steve, you gave a very good explanation of all the problems that are occurring within the city.
You want to come up so they can hear you?
You gave a very good explanation as to the issues that are happening within the city and how it's been broken down. My question is, what can the city do to initiate or force the county to get on board, to get done what it is that you have just explained? What process have you guys gone through to make the county accountable for this issue?
I don't know about forcing the county, but we can say that we are working with the agencies to define what it is that we want. So just like I explained now, we wanted to make sure that we have a process. We have identified the problem, and then just like any other issues, unless you truly identify what the work is, you can't proceed to fixing it. We did, and we're taking that to proper, and it's not just the county, we're actually taking it to other agencies. And it's work in progress, so.
How long do you think it'll take?
With government, so we're hoping for organization like hers to assist us. It isn't just Wayne County, it is many other agencies that have a stake in this. So with hopefully the more support we have, and I believe that the city has done quite a bit in the last couple of years in identifying a lot of the issues, and hopefully we can build on that and then support you or ADW or any other organization, because again, until we address these issues, recreational use or water quality, those are secondary, because they're not going to happen when you have this in place. So again, hopefully But we're on the right track.
They're a mediator, I understand it. They're just a.
There are many agencies like hers, though, that can help. Yeah.
We just need to get to the right people at the top.
Yeah.
To listen to us.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm going to kick you out. This spot. Send you away. Hi.
Hello.
My name's Rachel LaPointe. I live pretty close to the creek. I'm down in the south end. I have a long list of things that I would love to see happen, and I'm kind of going to take it away from the getting the drain maintenance stuff done to the more fun stuff. I've got 4 kids, from a kindergartner up to an 8th grader right now. They like to bike, they like to play outside, they love to go down to the creek and just look around and everything. There's been a few times where they come home with very muddy shoes. So I know they would love to see it cleaned up and brought back to that sort of like, healthy level where I know it's safe, that if they go and decide to wade in the water, I don't have to be worried about it. I had printed out the watershed management plan, and I know that that's part of like kind of the long-term goal to get it back to a place where, like, I think it said body contact would be a good thing. So I know that's something that, and I've talked with other families in the neighborhood, we would love to make sure that it's clean enough for our kids to play in and not worry about them getting sick. I would also love to see it walkable and sort of cleaned up along those sidewalks so that when I'm walking my dog down there, it looks nice. I mean, there's so many mental health benefits to taking a walk in nature, right?
Yeah.
I think the joke right now is to go touch grass. So getting everything cleaned up along the whole length of the creek and native wildflowers, native plants, things like that. I know I would really appreciate seeing that. It's something that I would really love to see. Even just the sidewalk repair, I'm sure it needs to be kind of looked at. Kayaking and canoeing. Was talking with a parent at one of the elementary schools yesterday about it. They just bought a property that butts up to the creek. Weren't able to come today, but I'm going to make sure they get the info for the last meeting. But they were talking about, they've wanted for years to be able to maybe kayak or canoe in the creek. We were saying that it'd be really cool, even just for a short thing from Heather Lane Park to the Richard Young Center. It's not very far, but it's 2 city-owned properties that we were kind of like, oh, that might be a kind of cool thing, that if it was at least cleaned up that little bit of a length, that then even if it's just that it gives the kids a chance to practice their skills in a safe neighborhood, I think that would be really awesome. And then I'm not sure if this is something you guys could do, but for all of us in that neighborhood, I think we've all dealt with flooding at one point or another in our homes, or at very least in our yards. For me, I'm trying to figure out spots where I can put in my own little mini rain gardens. A lot of the resources I've found that are available like locally are either like Ann Arbor area or Oakland County even. Like I haven't found a lot of really good, like, here's how to make a rain garden for Wayne County. And this is going to sound really nerdy. My grandmother, she had worked at the Dearborn Historical Museum. So I'm very familiar with the book, The Bark Covered House. And it talks about the creek in the 1800s. And I know there's like, all sorts of stuff about different plants and stuff, but I don't know if that's something that maybe the historical museum or different groups, I know there's gardener groups. I don't know if it's something you guys could work on as a project to get some very Dearborn Heights creek specific resources so that people know like the history of the watershed and how to kind of ease our flooding woes in our own literal backyards with some natural plants that would have been here before we all kind of changed it up a little bit. So, different things like that. And then the only one thing that I would be concerned about is I know District 7's putting in a new turf field, and it butts up against the creek, that property. And I know they had to go through EGLE to get permits, and they did get the permits, but I am still concerned that that's going to contribute to more flooding because they're putting in more impervious area. And I don't know if there's anything we can do specifically at that site by Pardee Elementary School to like alleviate it any more than what they were already sort of planned to do. But that's my only like kind of current area of concern right now. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rachel. we're recording all of this, so I know I'm not
Yes.
actively taking notes, but we
And I will make
we
sure
will have
like, I get that written down for you guys too, because I know it's a lot.
And I will give you my card, and I have plenty of rain garden resources that
Awesome.
I'm happy to share with you.
Yay. Okay, good, because I want to go buy more plants.
Don't we all? Any other, it could just be a question, clarifying comment, or looks like Mariana's coming up.
Hello, Mariana Hernandez, North Lafayette Street, Dearborn Heights. So my question is more with regards to the communication aspect of it and the inclusion of all of these 11 communities into the results of your study. So when are the results coming out? Are you going to share the findings? I would recommend scheduling a meeting with all of the communities together to have this input, because I do feel like one of the biggest weaknesses I've noticed here is that there is no collaboration amongst the 12 communities, the county, or the North Branch Ecorse Creek. And if we don't start working together, then we're never going to be able to find a solution for the project, because we all know what we need to do. We all know how much it costs to do the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer project. But until the communities agree on a way of funding these projects, there's nothing that we can do alone. So I was just wondering if you had any input on that.
That's a great question. So we are accepting public feedback through the end of June this year. At that time, we're going to also try to wrap up the community official discussions as well as our desktop analysis. From there, we will do limited windshield assessments to verify what we've received through these communications, that they're actually valid and true. So we'll be driving to some of these sites. In this first phase, what I just shared will follow us through October. So in that time period, sometime in probably like mid to late summer, we will be reconvening with the 11 communities to have a kind of a debrief of all of the recommended locations. We'll go over the map, and we can have any final input provided then. Then what we foresee, so I referenced the Ecorse Creek Committee a few times. The Ecorse Creek Committee was developed by the most downstream communities, Lincoln Park, Allen Park, and the city of Ecorse. However, there's interest to expand the Ecorse Creek Committee to all 11 communities, or as much as they're willing to participate. And we've been envisioning a process of having the Ecorse Creek Committee be a point for all the communities within the watershed to come in, share what they're doing, what there's issues, and what they could use resources and assistance on, and then maybe having that broken into the lower portion of the watershed, middle portion, and the upper portion. So we would have designations for the lowermost communities that I already referenced, the middle, including Dearborn Heights, and then all the way up through Romulus. And having that being part of the Ecorse Creek Committee, we could stage the meetings around the way that Wayne County is planning to spend the ARPA funds for the maintenance over the next couple of years. They are starting at the lowest point of the watershed, at the confluence with the Detroit River, and then working their way up. So we envision the lower, middle, and upper portions of the watershed to kind of be like little hubs for, okay, here's what the county's planning to do, let's talk about this. Now, what other opportunities in terms of green corridors and more green infrastructure can FDR assist with? And then the committee itself also helps to coordinate litter cleanup events. So every second Saturday of the month in the summertime, we coordinate these cleanups with the communities. We get residents out there, and we actively do the debris removal. So there's also the capacity to step into the volunteer portion of that. So the committee could be kind of a hub for all things Ecorse Creek, including county maintenance, Ecorse Creek support effort with FDR, which we're talking about today, and then also the community involvement in terms of stewarding the watershed and making a connection to it so folks care about it more.
Do you know who's the engineering company in charge of determining which areas get addressed first?
For the ARPA funds?
Yes.
I am not aware. Okay. I do know they work with Spicer Group, but I don't know if that's who is doing that that decision. I just know that it is one of their consultants.
And does Friends of the Detroit River have an engineer as well that's overseeing all of the recommendations and putting the plan together, or is it just based on feedback from the residents?
So not at this point. We see this as a 3-phase project. So phase 1 is what we're in right now, gathering community feedback, inventorying all possible sites within 1,000 feet of the creek. We see phase 2 as a prioritization of all the sites that we are collecting. And in that effort, we will see how much impact would each site have. Based on the relative impact, they will be prioritized in that ranking order. So projects that meet multiple goals of the watershed management plan, projects that have a large footprint, those are stuff that's going to qualify really high. And then when we get to phase 3, we'll be escaping the watershed approach that we used in phase 1 and 2, and we'll be diving into each individual project. And at that point, we'll bring on an engineer for feasibility, design, and construction.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments or questions that we want to address to the whole group? Otherwise, it looks like we have just about 20 minutes, and we can chat more about the specifics of the survey, and looks like Kurt's coming up.
Hello, Kurt Whitmore, Dearborn Heights resident. I also serve on the city's Ecorse Creek Commission as its chair. And I've heard some of the comments made this evening, and I'd like to address some of them. Councilman Ray Muscat mentioned that the creek is the county's. It's their drain, it's their problem. And I have a lot of questions for the county that I'd like to get answered. I don't think they've done the work that they are required or should be doing. I don't think we've seen it, and I'd like to get them to spend a lot of the money they should have been spending over the years to help us out with this problem. However, the main issue behind the flooding is, as you mentioned, impervious surfaces. And the city, or even before it was a city, a lot of construction was done, the streets were laid out, a lot of buildings were built, zoning was done, all before this was even a city. But it was the development of the land which has caused this large amount of water to pour into the creek at a very high rate, way beyond the natural processes would have. And that is the problem behind all this flooding. So I'm all behind getting the creek cleaned out by the county. I'd love to have them do what they can do on that. As far as communication between all these communities, this association or alliance of downriver watersheds, that seems like it'd be the place where all this communication interaction should be. I don't know what's going on, and I really don't know who represents Dearborn Heights on that, but it would seem to me if there was going to be communication, that would be the primary vehicle for that. Rain gardens. I'd also like to recommend Friends of the Rouge River. They are constantly, Friends of the Rouge River, constantly holding rain garden classes. A lot of these are virtual. Some have a fee that goes with them, but those are also available. And thirdly, our city engineer, Ali Deeb. With all due respect, we do have differences of opinion in regards to the creek and the best actions to be taken. We really don't know the actual sediment buildup that has occurred to the creek over the years. But I can guarantee you there's a couple things going to happen. One is if you open up all those drains from all the streets, the rainwater will just flood into the creek even faster than it is before. Because right now, basically that sediment's built up and it's blocking half or 3/4 of that drain outflow. Then that is actually slowing it down, which is actually, if you're going to help anything out as far as flooding and the creek's health, you want to slow down that flow. So I'm not sure what that's going to do, but we've had discussions about it, and one of the things, my recommendation to the city, if you want to increase the overall flow of the creek, you're going to have to replace all of the culverts, street crossings, which I understand there's about 15 of them right now. And I believe the city should commit to replacing one every year. They should try to put that in a budget, and they should do it because you can widen the creek out. You can make the creek deeper. But when it gets to those culverts, bam, that's your restriction. That's going to back you up. That's going to take and basically take all the rest of your work and make it null and void. The only reason I might back the dredging is because if you're able to take out a foot deep and 15 foot wide, that volume becomes then storage as far as holding maybe a 500,000 gallons that would otherwise could end up in the streets or in people's homes. So we differ on that, and we'll hammer it out. We'll work it out. We'll get there. But that's based on just all the comments I've heard tonight. So
Thanks for sharing, Kurt.
I appreciate your organization, and I'm looking for partners. I believe we need partners everywhere to get the job done. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it is going to be a watershed approach. Definitely not one community is going to fix this issue. And I will just comment, we work with the ADW. The ADW encapsulates more communities than just the Ecorse Creek watershed. So yes, it is appropriate, but also they expand beyond the watershed that we are considering into portions of the Huron River watershed and also just direct drainage to the Detroit River. So we do work with them, but it might not be the most appropriate for all of the stakeholders in that group. And then just to touch on clearing out the drains. So one thing wouldn't be just to remove the sediment that's built up in the drains, but retrofit those drains. So the outfall isn't immediately going into the creek, but instead it's going that we're catching stormwater from a roof, a parking lot, a basketball court, whatever it is, and we're diverting it into an area where we can use it for habitat, wetlands, floodplains, and then that would flow into the creek. So it wouldn't just be cleaning out the pipes for direct flow into the creek, but retrofitting to store the water, let it infiltrate naturally, create a higher groundwater level table, so when we're done with a flashy flow condition like a 3-inch rain, we don't immediately have no water in the creek, but there's enough to sustain the wildlife populations and create habitat in there, which ultimately will then trickle down into helping improve the water quality as well. Yeah.
You run away from me?
I did. I wanted to grab my water.
Hassan Jamal, I am the City Director for Community and Economic Development Department. One of the projects I handle is the FEMA project, which is relieving the resident who fed up with the misery of the flood and dealing with their health and safety. So we offer to buy their homes, demolish the home, and turn it into a space, which we call it open green space, safe and healthy, free of all the contamination and the hazardous materials. It's recorded to FEMA. We maintain it. If we want to do something in it, it gotta be no, you know, it doesn't interfere with the floodway. So no structure, nothing on it, just plan. Okay, so I know you are here to asking us what you can help us with your project, a green project, not with the infrastructure of the creek. So let's make sure the resident understand that. So you are not here to help the city resolve the infrastructure of the structure of the creek and deterioration, whatever. You are here to help us around the creek. What can we offer for you? Those properties are free for you. We'll deal with you, the county, and FEMA to release it for you if you want to do a project in it. Those are the leftover, because we may use some of those, for some other, infrastructure. We don't know yet, but we have already approved by FEMA to do scoping, to find out if detention, retention works, not working, whatever. It's not in your scope. It's the city and the county scope. The number two things I recommend immediately right now, the Swapka Park. It's near the creek. It is part of our Richard Young Center, recreational. That can be a perfect place for you to start, okay? Because I can't, or the city cannot qualify that park for federal money because it's an area where it doesn't qualify. We have another project going on right now at other park, also adjacent to the creek. We are beautifying the park for the people down there who live and wanted to feel that they are welcome in that area. So this is, I think, I recommend this park for you to look at. It's called Swapka Park, next to Richard Young Center. You can start there. You can beautify it. You can put a lot of amenity over there. That's how you can assist us with your greenish, recreational project, which I think right now it's the trend. Federal trend, state trend. It's everybody's trend. After the pandemic, everybody wants people out, recreation, green, because it's proved that it relieved the people from the after effect of the pandemic. With that, if anybody have a question, please go ahead and tell us. Other than that, the city is welcoming you. We want to be green and greenish as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Hassan. And just to clarify, so it's not to say our projects would never address infrastructure, but we're not going to go through the watershed and only address infrastructure. If we identify Swapka Park for a project and there were a outfall that were completely filled with sediment and debris, that could be part of that project, but we couldn't just go identify every single outfall and do that as a project. So if it were in the scope, proximity, actual, relative of length, distance from a project, there could be potential for that. And some other, yeah, just as long as it's on the creek. And then some other examples of that might look like, enhancing bridges or walkways. So it's not to say no infrastructure, it just has to be tied to a green scope. Yes.
Now we can add more.
Yes, and we will. So I see we have 10 minutes left. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. If you didn't have a chance to go up to the podium and speak, there's printed surveys over with Kaylee and Sam. We have them in English, Spanish, Arabic. They're also all online, and you can access it from this QR code that is up on the screen, and I'm going to move this so you can actually take a picture of it with your phone. That's going to be the easiest way to submit your content in terms of where you'd like to see efforts take place, what you'd like to see. As I mentioned, we'll be collecting this through the end of June, so folks still have about 2 months if anyone is interested.
Our great, kind assessor, he will help you a lot identify, the property that the city owns.
Yeah, we do have the FEMA list of sites, and I actually went through and categorized which ones were within our 1,000-foot scope, which the majority were. There were a few that weren't. But yes, that's perfect. This is exactly the kind of content we would like to hear. Just want to thank you all again for taking your time to come down and listen to me and have me listen to you. If you know anyone else that would be interested in sharing their feedback on this, please take some flyers, We have ample of them over here on our table, and that has all the information we went over today, including the upcoming meeting and the QR link to take the survey. Okay, any last minute chances on the podium? Otherwise, I'll just hang out here and we can chat. Okay, Nancy, there we go.
Okay, my family's been in that area since 1946. I'm 10 blocks away from the creek. And some things have changed, but most have gotten worse. And somebody I believe Mr. Janney wanted to know what we've done. We did win a lawsuit with the county. It was never pursued. So I don't know if we could take up on that again, but I don't know. But it wasn't taken care of. That was 10 to 12 years ago. And there have been many efforts. And in addition to the areas you've mentioned, we've got Beach Daily and Van Born, where the CVS is. Just pulling out some of the stuff would be a big improvement at that location. I believe there's a culvert there. There's a, well, what is he? He's not a squirrel, he's not a raccoon. His name is Chucky. The neighbors all know him right there. And he goes under the concrete to visit the neighbors. But we have another, and we've got, of course, the Hanover Courier that they've mentioned, where we've taken all the properties out. The best one, of course, is Swapka. And then we also have Inkster Road and Van Born, where we've discussed having a retainer detention type location. That is city property. That can be assessed as well. And I'm wondering, all these meetings we're having together, are we going to share where the people are helping each other go in and actually pull out debris?
For cleanup efforts?
Yes.
Yeah, so I know we've had some conversations with the Ecorse Creek Committee. I'm not sure where those have left off, to be honest, if there was anything more. But we tend to have all of the cleanup efforts on the second Saturday of the month in July, August, and September. And as part of that, the committee works with the communities to help identify, who's going to be removing the debris, where's it going, getting the dumpsters there. We really help with recruiting the volunteers, with the outreach of it. So we'll have to touch base.
If we could be included in that. I know we have Miss Sterlini here, Tanya, and of course, Kirsch, who spoke, and myself. We're all on our Ecorse committee. And we definitely would like to partake with others and have them hopefully come back and help us as well.
Definitely. I'll make sure you're on that next meeting, and we can continue to conversate about coordinating those events, doing the outreach for them. We're always looking for new locations. As I mentioned, most of the cleanup efforts have been taking place in Lincoln Park, Allen Park, and Ecorse. So anywhere outside of that's a little out of our wheelhouse, so we need the locals to recommend where we can access the creek. Is it wadeable? Is it kayakable? Kind of how we're accessing it. In the downstream communities, we all hop on kayaks and go in it, and I don't believe it's about the same in this community, but having those conversations will allow us to do that. And I believe we meet every third Thursday of the month at 3:30 with the committee. So I'll make sure you're on that next call.
That sounds great.
Continue to have those conversations.
And I thank you for everything you've done coming to our meetings and so forth, and we want to work with you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Nancy. All right. No questions online? Okay. Well, thank you for fielding that. Well, I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen then. And if there's not anyone else that wants to come up to the podium, Kaylee, Sam, and I will be hanging out for a few last minutes if you want to chat with us about anything one-on-one. But I recommend you at least grab some information on your way out. The left-hand side of the table is kind of general FDR, and the right-hand side of the table is going to be more focused on the Ecorse Creek's support. But just want to thank you all again for your time this evening now, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.